Welcome to the IGEOS Show, where we help grow the passion for an extraordinary workplace. If you're listening to or watching this, we hope to strengthen your passion for a workplace that has the potential not only to have an extraordinary impact on your life, but also on the world. My name is Amit Riker, and my co-hosts are Valerio Pascotto and Timothy Galway. Now to you, Valerio.
Thank you, Amit. What drives our efforts is really a vision and credo to enrich humaneness in the workplace. For that, we interview thought leaders who have been inspired by values of compassion, empathy, and modeling to share their discoveries, challenges, and successes. Really, there is no time like now to change the tide, from hateful divisiveness to seeking similarities, from the myth of the genius to the wisdom of humankind, and from the fears of the primitive brain to the wonder of generosity and warmth.
To support you in this work of creating extraordinary workplaces, we would like to offer you a free worksheet you can download on the 5 disciplines of a high-performance team. Just go to IGEOS.net to download the sheet and learn more about us. And now, on to our guest for today. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We have another exciting guest with us today. We have today happiness expert, Alex Kjerulf.
Hey there.
So Alex is the founder and chief happiness officer at Woohoo Inc. And one of
technically it's called Woohoo.
Woohoo. And he is one of the world's leading experts on happiness at work. And I'm gonna let Alex take it away and tell us a little bit more about himself.
Sure. Yeah, as you said, that's my passion. That's my field. I founded my current company, which is called Woohoo, way back in 2003. We've been doing this work for 15 years now. And it all comes out of this idea that everybody's got to work, right? I mean, unless you're born to billionaire parents, you are going to have to work for a living. Given that, I think work should be awesome. And the sad fact is that for most people, it's not. So the question we've been trying to answer for the last 15 years is, how can we make work awesome? How can we make workplaces great workplaces where people actually like to work? And that's what we've been doing. We do speeches and workshops for clients around the world. Just a month ago, I spoke in China for the first time. And so we've now been to 48 different countries. Wow. To teach this to companies around the world. And what I think is incredibly encouraging is to see how many organizations around the world are realizing that it's worth focusing on happiness at work. They're starting to realize that, if they are good workplaces where people actually like to work, then people will do better work and the company will be more successful. There's a groundswell. There's a huge movement around this all over the world. And I think that's incredibly positive. The future of the work is happy.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. So I'd like to take a step back and then maybe take a look at how you first got introduced to Timothy Galway's work, and then tell us a little bit of a story of that and how it sort of blossomed since then.
Yeah. In my previous life, in my previous career, work life, I was in tech, right? I have a master's degree in computer science. I worked first as a software developer, then as a consultant. And in 1997, I co-founded a software consulting company in Copenhagen. And we did large-scale custom software solutions for clients. And after 5 years, we sold that company. And at that point, I took a break. I decided not to be a part of the company that bought us. I quit. And I was sort of asking myself, so what do I want to do with my life? And that's when the idea came to me of focusing on happiness at work. Because it is a passion of mine. I want people to be happy at work. And as part of that, when I started doing this work, I had I was not a public speaker. I had no degree in psychology or in organizational theory or anything like that. So I thought I should do some research. So I went out and read probably on the order of 300 books on all of those topics: psychology, happiness, organizational theory, learning. And one of the books that really inspired me the most was The Inner Game of Work. Because this very idea that learning is at the core of everything we do, that, you know, you can become so obsessed about the outcome that it actually hurts the outcome. I think that is incredibly prevalent in business. And the idea that you can make the process fun, you can make the process engaging, you can focus on the process and not necessarily the results. You can focus on what you learn. It just really, really inspired me and became the foundation for a lot of the work we do. A lot of the work we do is about making people aware of what's already present in their work environment, rather than focusing on, you know, achieving this goal or meeting this KPI. Helping them become aware of what is already there. So I really feel like some of the Galway's book, the Inner Game of Work, was a huge inspiration for me at the time, and has sort of, some of those ideas sort of underlie a lot of the work we've done since then.
That's fantastic. So as you first discovered it, and as you were going on this massive learning journey, how did things start to evolve for you from there?
Very quickly, I would say. I think what happened very quickly was that what happened was that I was, you know, one of the first people to actually talk about happiness at work. You know, it's not a new topic as such, but a lot of people have been talking about motivation, right? A lot of people talk about communication at work, or they will talk about, you know, performance or productivity. But I think what I sort of lucked into was focusing specifically on happiness at work. You know, creating workplaces where people are actually happy to work. Not that you're ridiculously ecstatic every second of every day, because that's impossible. But, you know, when you overall, you like the work you do, and you're, you know, kind of excited to go to work most days. Maybe not every day, but certainly most days. And the idea of making, you know, of introducing learning as part of that, of making, you know, your awareness of your current situation a huge part of that, I think came very, very naturally. And I think if you look at many people who are unhappy at work, it's because they don't have that. It's because all of the focus is on the results. Everything rides on the outcome and not the process. And it's just sad to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to take this time now. So you've written this, your latest book, Leading with Happiness, and your first book as well.
Nice to see it so heavily annotated.
Yes, exactly.
The stickers. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then your other book as well, Happy Hours 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So tell us about how that sort of evolved for you. When were you inspired for that first book, and how did it lead you when you came now to this book?
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to write a book, right? And here's the thing. Here's the funny thing. I actually tried to write the first one. Happy Hours 9 to 5 is my first book. Came out in 2006, and it's sort of my it's, you know, my fundamental. It's the fundamental book on happiness at work, the way we see it, right? So explains our models and theories, backs it up with science and so on. And I wanted to write it for a while. I actually tried to write it in 2004. And I got about 75% into the book, and then I just could not finish it. I just could not complete it. And you know why? I think because I was focusing on the result and not the process. Yes, I fell into that mistake myself. I was like, I have this book. It has this many chapters. I need to write this chapter, then this chapter, blah, 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 blah. And I was not enjoying it. I was just not having any fun in the process. So when I decided to write it try again in 2006, I said, here's the thing. I have to make writing the book fun. This is a book about happiness at work. Writing it should make me happy. I had to fundamentally re-examine my approach to how I wrote things, right? So I changed my approach to this completely. And here's how I did it. You want to hear how I did it specifically?
Please, okay. Let's hear.
So I had the summer off business, and I'm based in Denmark, and business in Denmark pretty much shut down over the summer vacation. So, half of June, most of July, there's nothing going on, no business, no clients, nothing. So I had the whole summer off. So what I would do is in the morning, I'd go to one of my favorite cafes with my laptop. And here's the thing, and I discovered this by accident. One day I came to the cafe without my charger, right? So I had maybe 3 hours, of power on the machine, and then, I could do no more work. And what happened was that during those 3 hours, I was incredibly productive because I knew I didn't have the whole day. I had like the morning, right? So that actually became a ritual for me. Okay, instead of, because when I had that limited time, I didn't waste time online. I didn't waste time on emails or anything. I just write. So that became a ritual. I take my laptop, leave the charger at home, go to my favorite cafe, have some breakfast, have a cup of coffee, and then write. And what happened was that during those times, I would be very, very productive. But actually, in one morning, I could write most of a chapter on my book. And writing felt amazing. It was such an energizing process because it was so time boxed. It was not a whole day. It was 3 hours. And then I could go do something else. And, it was the summertime. I could go wakeboarding or, go to a park or the beach or whatever, right? So that was actually became a really, really cool process. There are a couple of other ways that I tweaked the process. So for instance, I would write a chapter and then post the chapter to my blog, which is very, very popular. So other people could read it and give me feedback. And I could include that feedback in the writing process and make the process more collaborative, which fits very well with who I am. I work much better together with other people than I do alone. And all of those things taken together, focusing on making the process fun rather than on, writing a book in a certain amount of time, created a much better outcome, which is exactly the point, right? So I actually wrote the first draft of the book in about a month, and then polished it, and it was out three months later. And and a lot of people have read it. It's become very popular. It's been translated into 10 different languages. It's available in 11 different languages. I wrote it in English. It's also out in Chinese and Spanish and Danish and Dutch and a lot of other languages. So that was actually a fascinating example of how I forgot that lesson myself, and then I could apply it, and it totally worked.
That is amazing. That always fascinates me, the lessons that we learn and that we're either sharing with through our workshops with our clients, that at the end of the day, we're still students ourselves and have to remember to practice it for ourselves. So and that never goes away. We're always those students for life. So
exactly, and once you forget that, I think you lose a lot. And I did forget it, and then I remembered it.
And then you remembered it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That reminds me of one of the inner game principles that is talked about is the PLE triangle, the performance, learning, and enjoyment. And then when we actually allow ourselves to be learning in the process and enjoying the process, performance will naturally come. And this story of yours is a beautiful example of that. Yeah.
And you see that in so many organizations where, there's so much focus on the performance that there's no enjoyment and no learning. There's no time for either, right? It's what they feel. And what inevitably happens is that the performance suffers. You cannot maintain a good performance in that way over any stretch of time. So yeah, and of course, learning in itself feels amazing. Learning in itself is hugely enjoyable. It's I think a very fundamental human drive is the drive to get better, the drive to learn, to pick up new skills, new knowledge. We're insatiably curious. We want to know, we want to learn, we want to grow. Yeah.
Beautiful. One of the things that you talk about as well is, I believe I remember seeing in one of your past interviews, is the two of the major psychological human needs, the need to make a difference and the need to belong. Could you tell us a bit more about that and how that's played into your work?
Sure. So one of the fundamental questions we had to answer is, what is it that makes people happy at work, right? Is it the money? Is it the salary, right? Is it bonuses? Is it promotions? Is it perks, like, free fruit in the office or whatever? And a lot of people think that's what it is. But if you look at the research, it turns out that those things don't matter that much as long as they are fair and equitable, right? If your salary is fair, if your salary is unfair, it can definitely make you unhappy. But a salary that is, that is ridiculously high will not necessarily make you very happy. So looking at the research that's available, and there's some amazing research on what makes us happy at work. We boiled it down to results and relationships, right? What you're saying, doing great work, making a difference, especially getting results that you can see are meaningful, where you're actually doing work that helps somebody else who needs it, a client or society or the environment or whatever. And then, of course, relationships, this feeling that I belong in the workplace. I am accepted as a human being. I have great coworkers. My boss likes me, that kind of thing. That's definitely, that's in my opinion, that's where happiness at work is. And it's because it's precisely because those are our two most fundamental psychological human needs, right? The need to make a difference and the need to belong. As long as we have that covered, we'll be happy. If we don't, we'll be miserable. And of course, I think a lot of workplaces focus a lot on results, right? That's the whole performance side. But they often do it in a very short-term way, and they often do it in a way where they forget the purpose of the results. So maybe you will have a certain amount of goals or a certain number of KPIs that you need to meet on a weekly or monthly or quarterly or whatever basis. But so you know what you're doing. But the big question is, of course, why are you doing it? Why is this work important? Why does this work contribute to something that you find meaningful? And in many, especially in many large organizations, you're just a small cog in a big machine, and there may be very little understanding of why this work is important, why this work helps the company or your coworkers or the customers or whatever. Mm-hmm. And in that situation, I think it's very, very hard to be happy at work, even if you're getting great results by the numbers, because the numbers in itself don't make us happy. The numbers in themselves. What makes us happy is knowing that I make a difference. I make the world a little bit better through the work that I do. Think of a school teacher, right? Mm-hmm. I think they probably have many goals they need to reach, right? They need to teach a certain number of hours. They need to, maybe help their students achieve a certain grade point average or whatever. But what really makes the typical school teacher happy is knowing that the kids are thriving and happy in school, and knowing that the kids are interested in what they're learning and can apply it in life, and it makes their lives better. The numbers in themselves are nice, I guess, but what really makes you happy at work is getting meaningful results and seeing that your work is actually contributing to making the world a little bit better.
Absolutely. So on the topic and the phrase happiness at work, tell us about arbeidsglæde.
Very good. That's very, very good pronunciation. Yeah.
Arbeidsglæde. Tell us what that word is and how, the background behind it.
Sure. So I have one massive advantage in the work that I do, which is that I'm Danish. And in Danish, there is a word for happiness at work. The word is arbejdsglæde. So arbejde in Danish means work, glæde means happiness. So that literally just means work happiness, right? And every Dane knows this word. It's a perfectly normal, accepted word, part of the vocabulary. Everybody knows it. And what's kind of interesting is that this word does not exist in any other language on the planet except the Scandinavian ones, right? So Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian are very similar, all have this word. But there is no word for being happy at work in English or in German or in Spanish or in Chinese or in Russian or any other language on the planet. And this indicates that this idea of happiness at work in Scandinavia is not only normal and commonplace, it's actually expected. As a Dane, if you get a new job, you fully expect it to be a good job, something you like to do with nice coworkers and a good boss and a good atmosphere in the workplace, interesting tasks. You expect that. And if you don't get that, if you get a job that you kind of hate, you think there's something wrong. It's something Danes very much take for granted. And this is not the case in the rest of the world. In many, many other countries, people almost expect the opposite, right? People almost expect to hate their jobs. There's this belief that, you know, of course work sucks. That's just the way it is, right?
Work is work. Suck it up and go to work.
Exactly. I don't know if you remember the Drew Carey show at all, but there's there's a fantastic sitcom from the 90s, and there's a wonderful episode where Drew Carey is talking to Kate, and she says, "I hate my job," and then Drew Carey says, "You hate your job? Oh my God, why didn't you say so? You know, there's a support group for that. It's called Everybody. They meet at the bar." So everybody hates their jobs, right? Of course, that's funny. It's a sitcom, but it is indicative of you know, a very prevalent attitude towards work in certainly in U.S. culture, that you know, work just sucks, just the way it is. Suck it up, and just deal with it, right? And you shouldn't expect to be happy at work because work just sucks.
Right. So how could you say that either with the work that you're doing or leaders at multiple levels, there's leaders that can be helping to shift that dynamic, the way that we as team members ourselves can come to help shift that culture? What would you say for leaders to be able to help shift that, especially in pre-existing cultures that expect work to be unpleasurable as the default?
Yes. And that's, of course, what my latest book is about, right? The Leading with Happiness book. After I wrote the first one, which was about happiness at work in general, I was like, leadership is incredibly important. If we want to create good and happy workplaces, we need leaders, good and happy leaders. So what I talk about in Leading with Happiness is that I think we need to fundamentally re-examine the nature of leadership. What is the purpose of leadership? How do we define good leadership? And how do we distinguish it from bad leadership? And of course, there are many approaches to this, right? You can find any number of articles on Google trying to define, you know, a good leader should be decisive, or a good leader should be charismatic, or a good leader should be strong, or a good leader should be strategic, and I don't know, whatever, right? I think we need to re-examine that, and I think we need a fundamentally different definition of leadership. So the one that I propose is that leadership is about happiness. That's really what it is, and that on a very fundamental level, good leaders increase the amount of happiness in the world. They through their leadership, they make the world better. And what I write about in the book is specifically they create happiness for 4 different groups. First of all, they create happiness for themselves. You know, a good leader needs to be happy herself or himself. Because if the leader is miserable, everybody is miserable. Then they need to create happiness for their employees, of course. They need to create happiness for the customers, the clients, whoever their organization is serving. It can be the hospitals the patients in the hospital, can be the students in the school and their families, their parents, or whatever. And then they need to create happiness for the wider society, the local community, the wider world, in whatever they can do. So it's not only about the organization itself, it's about a wider view of leadership and the impact that leadership has inside and outside the organization. And I think that is the definition of good leadership. We know good leaders because they're happy themselves and they create happiness around them. And we can recognize bad leaders by the fact that they create fear, frustration, misery, all around them. And I think we need more of that leadership that is about creating a better world, that is about creating happiness. And of course, what we've had for a while now is of course leadership, business leadership specifically, that's been focused only on results, business results, and usually only on short-term business results. And it's been a fairly accepted idea that as a business leader, all you need to do is focus on this month's results, this quarter's numbers, or whatever. And I think that kind of leadership can be incredibly damaging. It can carry tremendous costs for employees, for the environment, for society, for the organization. And I think that kind of leadership is wrong. I think it's ethically really, really dubious. I don't necessarily want to use the word evil, but it can be. It definitely has the potential to harm a lot of people, and that's just wrong. And we need to change that. And the good news is there are so many leaders out there who are the opposite, who are actually focused on creating a better world, and we need more of those leaders.
So you identify some of those leaders. I believe you mentioned directly in the book about great examples of Richard
Yeah,
Branson,
yeah,
Ben and Jerry's, Tony
yeah,
Hsieh.
yeah.
Well, tell us about the experience that you've seen from amazing leaders, amazing companies doing amazing work.
Yeah. Well, here's one of my favorite examples is Robert Chapman. And he's the CEO of a company in St. Louis called Barry Wehmiller. Industrial giant all over the world, 14,000 employees, very successful. And he had an awakening a number of years ago, because he was raised in the traditional business thinking. So he got himself a business degree, and he learned, it's all about results. It's all about the numbers. This is what you need to do, yada, yada. And at one point, he sort of has this awakening where he realizes that every single one of his employees is a human being. And every one of them is affected by the time they spend working in his workplace. And every single one of them matters. So he turns his organization around and makes it much more people-centric. And he wrote a book about it called Everybody Matters, which is a beautiful, beautiful book. Highly recommend it. And this basic idea that we need to focus on creating a better world and creating more happiness, I think runs all through that book. And he's done some amazing work on that. He also has a wonderful TEDx talk, which I highly recommend. Everybody should watch that. So this basic idea and what they've done in Barry Wehmiller, of course, there are so many ways that they've made their workplaces. There are many smaller workplaces inside Barry Wehmiller, many offices and production plants around the world. And they've done many cool things to make each one of them better. But overall, the idea is that this is about they redefine the mission of the company. And the mission of the company is now to ensure happy work for all of their employees. And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful mission. And a wonderful example of a leader who took responsibility for the effect that his leadership has on his people.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Coming back to that example, you're talking about the four principles. One of the things that I love you're highlighting the concept from Herb Keller of Southwest, and many times people may look at it and see like focus on the employee first. Shouldn't the customers be first? And we have our shareholders, we've got profits to take care of. And so why is this so important to say, this is obvious to you, obvious for us seeing the impacts of it, but why us first? Doesn't that seem selfish? Aren't we being selfish?
That's a good point, right? Well, but there are a couple of counterpoints you can make. First of all, there's a lot of research that indicates that if you look at it from an organizational standpoint, you can invest in your employees, you can invest in your customers, or you could invest in the bottom line. And there's a lot of research to show that when you invest in your employees, that actually has the biggest return on investment, rather than investing in customers and investing it directly in the bottom line. So that certainly indicates that it works. You could also look at it from this standpoint. I mean, of course the customers matter. The customers are really important, but how much time does the average customer spend in your organization? I'm willing to bet that it's a lot less than 40 hours a week than the 40 hours a week your employees are spending there, right? So if you can make your employees happier, that there's the potential to impact, just from the time spent in the organization is way, way bigger. And ultimately, what this is about, it's about leadership putting employees first, so employees can put the customers first. Because if leadership puts the customers first, they will consistently make decisions and do things that favor customers over employees, and that will over time make employees unhappy. So what you got to do, and I think what Southwest Airlines have really, and under the leadership of Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett, what they really cracked the code on is they strategically put their employees first, so the employees could put the customers first. Because when your employees are really, really happy, when they love their jobs, they're at work having a great day, they will have much more energy, creativity, and much more, willingness to serve the customer. On the other hand, if your employees are at work and they're having a really crappy day and they hate their boss and they hate the company and they hate their coworkers and everything sucks, how can they ever give good customer service? It's just not going to happen. So this idea that you put your employees first so they can put the customer first, and that way you make more money, and that strengthens us, and then that's good for the shareholders. That makes you more money. I think that's a wonderful approach to business, and it's just great to see more and more companies taking that approach. Southwest Airlines is one example. Google is another. Google said very quickly when they had their IPO, very clearly when they had their IPO, we're going to put our people first. That's just the way it is at Google. If you don't agree with that, please don't invest in Google.
Wow. You talk about also Zappos, and I believe you had visited. So what was the experience like that? Because Zappos is very big on happiness and having happy employees. How's that? How was that experience?
Zappos is awesome. Okay, it's one of those I've been there, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now, and it's one of those workplaces where you walk into their offices and you can just feel it. You can just feel that this is a good place, and you walk down the hallways and people look at you and they nod and they smile, and it's not like everybody's walking around like they're ridiculously happy, but you can tell people here are having a good day. And they're fun and they're engaging and they're open and they're friendly, and it's just you can just feel it. I talked to one of their HR people, one of their culture team, and she told me every morning she pulls her car into the parking lot and she gets out of the car and she's like, I can relax. I'm at work. And it's not just because of the bad Vegas traffic, right? It is because this is genuinely a good workplace that genuinely cares about its people. And of course, Zappos are famous for their legendary customer service. But they're also very clear on the fact that the reason they have this fantastic customer service is because their employees love their jobs. And they do everything they can to create this culture where people love their jobs. So they focus on hiring the right people, training them in the right way, teaching them the culture, giving them the right skills, having the right people in leadership, having the right tools for everybody to do a good job, giving feedback consistently. They have legendary parties for their employees that are also important for creating good relationships. So really just a company that does everything it can to make its employees happy so the employees can make the customers happy.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, and of course there's the book Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, fantastic book. And they do tours. And if you're ever in Vegas, I highly recommend it. You go on the Zappos website, you can book a tour. I think it's $19. And they will give you a 1.5-hour tour of the offices and tell you all about their culture. And it's a real learning experience. There's so much you can pick up from that.
That's beautiful. Just the story, the example of the HR stepping out of her car and being relieved that she's at work is just a completely different paradigm shift for many people who don't know that or don't feel that way. And
Yes.
So, Alex, what would you say there may be people watching this and people who are in organizations doing meaningful work, but are like, like the work is just difficult. Like we have very challenging problems we're trying to solve, very challenging customers we're dealing with. And, there's just a certain amount of suck that's going to be in the work, like how might you work with them, or what might you share with them to help shift either the mindset for them personally, and then at a broader level for their company culturally?
I think the first thing to realize is that there is no perfect job, right? There is no job where it's all sunshine and roses, and every single task you do is amazing and you're happy all the time. It's about finding a job where you'll fit in well, and then it's about making it a good job. And you can do a lot of things yourself. If you have consistently have this task that's really hard for you to do, maybe you can learn to do it better. Maybe you can pick up some new skills. Maybe you can ask for help, right? So there are many things that you as an individual can do to become happier in the job you already have. And there is no perfect job. You take a job and you make it good for you, right? On the other hand, there are also jobs out there that are not good for you, and they will never be. And if you're in one of those jobs, get the hell out as fast as you can. And it may not even be a bad workplace. It may not be a bad job. Maybe it's just not the right fit for you, because not every person is perfect in every job. My first job out of a university was for a company in Denmark called Bang & Olufsen. And it was the dream of every software engineer to go work there, right? They're very famous. They make these very high-end stereos and televisions. It's really beautifully designed, very expensive products. And I really wanted to work there. And I actually got the job. And I hated it. And it's not a bad workplace. It's really not a bad workplace. It's just that the way they approach software development is incredibly meticulous and very, very structured, and leaves very little room for creative expression. So it just did not fit who I was. So I lasted 6 months, and then I finally quit and went and found a new job. So that's certainly a lesson for the individual. Maybe you're just not in a job that fits you very, very well, and maybe you need to go work somewhere else. And sadly, people don't. A lot of people, stay stuck in jobs they hate for years or decades. Which is why we created International Quit Your Crappy Job Day. Once a year, March 31st, it's International Quit Your Crappy Job Day. And we're not saying you should wait until next year, March 31st, to quit. We're just saying this basic awareness that we're using it as a tool to create awareness that you can quit. There is maybe, if you're really unhappy at work, there's probably a better job out there somewhere. And instead of wasting a lot of time and energy trying to become happy in the job you have, move on, find something better. And of course, especially if you're stuck in a toxic culture, especially if you have a jerk manager, those are situations where you just need to get out of there as fast as you humanly can. So that's what, the individual can do many things. You can do many things yourself as just a regular employee to create better results in relationships for yourself and for others. In fact, if you look at the research, it turns out that if you look at the happiness research, that one of the most effective things you can do if you want to be happier yourself is make somebody else happy. We've seen that in so many studies, that when people do nice things for themselves, it does make them a little happier. But when we do nice things for others, it makes us a lot happier. So I think one of the fundamental lessons here is to stop thinking about, your happiness at work as an isolated individual pursuit, and start looking at it as a team pursuit, and maybe say, how can I be an amazing coworker? If you want to be happy at work, maybe one of the best things you can do is make those around you happier, improve the happiness of your team, your coworkers, whatever. Because if you can make them happier, it will come right back to you. And just making other people happy makes us happy. If you look at it from an organizational perspective, of course, work is hard, right? There are very few easy challenges in workplaces these days. Competition is harder than ever. The change of pace is the rate of change is higher than ever. No workplace can stay static for very long. What we're doing today is not what we were doing a year ago in most workplaces. So of course there are challenges, but here's the thing to remember. If you can create a happy workplace, it will be much, much easier to overcome those challenges, because when people are happy at work, they are more creative and innovative. They are much more motivated about and optimistic about the future. And that makes you much more likely to succeed in whatever challenges your organization is facing. And when you look at some of the happy workplaces out there, and you look at Southwest Airlines, being an airline is pretty challenging. You have security and safety challenges. You have a changing political environment with a lot of regulations. It's you have oil prices going up and down. You have competition from all the other airlines. You have belligerent customers demanding incredibly high customer service. So that's incredibly hard. But in that industry, Southwest Airlines have consistently managed to be a really good workplace. And that they say is why they've been consistently profitable. In fact, Southwest Airlines is the only major airline in the world that has been profitable every single year for the last, 45 years.
Right.
Yeah. And if you ask them, why is that? They'll say there are many reasons, but especially most of all, it's because we have great staff. They're happy at work. It means they do great work. It means we make more money. So rather than using whatever challenges, you can look at the challenges facing your organization and you can use them as an excuse and say, oh my God, our industry is so tough, we can never be a happy workplace. Or you can do a little bit of a mind shift and say, our industry is really tough, where there's no way we'll ever overcome all of these challenges if our employees are miserable at work. We need to be a happy workplace. And many other organizations in really challenging industries have managed to do that. So why wouldn't we be able to do it as well?
Absolutely. What's one of your favorite stories where you've seen that beautiful shift, almost in an environment where you would have never expected it?
Yeah, there are so many. So many. But one of my favorite examples is a company right here in Copenhagen called SEB Pension. And SEB Pension are, of course, a pension company. So, this is, again, challenging industry, a lot of competition, a lot of regulations, and they're taking people's pension funds and investing them. And right now we're living in very volatile financial times. So that causes a lot of stress. There's a lot of competition for talent. You need the best financial planners. You need the best lawyers. You need the best accountants. And also there's, it's a growing business. More and more people are investing in their pensions. So, it's also a very successful business, which creates a lot of work, which creates a lot of stress, right? So we got in touch with SEB Pension. There are about 800 people in Denmark in 2 or 3 different offices around Denmark. And they had realized that the only way they could successfully achieve their results was if their employees were happy. And they were like, so how can we do that? And we helped them a little bit. My coworker Arlette went there and did a speech. And then what happened was that they made happiness one of their top strategic priorities. From the CEO down, there was just like, this, we're going to focus on this. We're going to run a happy organization. It's the only way we can achieve our goals. And this was not easy because you have to remember, again, financial organization. There's a lot of people here in suits and ties. And also, they're owned by a big Swedish bank called SEB, very old, very traditional Swedish organization. So when they were looking at this, they were like, that's weird. Happiness, what the hell are you talking about? Just get your numbers every month. That's what we want. So there was a lot of resistance, but with a strategic focus from the CEO down, and then with the help of a lady who decided that she wanted to be their chief happiness officer, basically the project manager for creating a happy organization, a wonderful lady called Helene, who's their head of legal. So she sort of put together the project. She also put together a team, a happiness team, who kickstarted a lot of initiatives around the organization to make it a happier workplace. And with that, over a period of 2 or 3 years, they've completely transformed the organization and made it a much, much better workplace, and achieved higher levels of customer satisfaction and better financial results. So I think that's a wonderful example of, taking it seriously on a strategic level, and then just implementing a lot of cool initiatives in the workplace to make it a better workplace for every employee. And if you can do it in a serious financial workplace with like ACV pension, you can do it pretty much anywhere.
That is an incredible story. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Alex, we're coming near the end of our time. So maybe as we start wrapping up here with a few more topics, what final words of wisdom would you have to share for companies, conscious leaders, conscious teams, conscious companies wanting to really make a shift in how they can be in this world?
I think the fundamental idea that we keep coming back to is this. It's that happiness matters. Your impact, if you are a leader, you have an impact on other people. That's pretty much the definition of leadership, right? Imagine a leader who never has any impact on anybody. That's not much of a leader. Through your leadership, you're going to impact your employees. You're maybe going to impact customers, maybe going to impact the wider society. I don't know, but you have impact as a leader. And when you do that, I think you have an ethical responsibility to make sure that impact overall is positive, that overall you're making people's lives better through your leadership. And this may sound like a soft and fluffy idea, but it's really, really not. And I think the fundamental idea, the fundamental idea that we keep returning to is that there is no contradiction between happiness and business results. It's not like, okay, I'll focus on happiness now. Maybe the results will suffer a little bit, but that's fine because happiness is more important. It's not the point. There is no contradiction between the two. In fact, if you can create more happiness for yourself, your employees and your customers and the wider society, that will strengthen your results. It will make your employees more productive, more effective, more motivated, more engaged. When your customers are happy, they will keep coming back and buying more stuff from you. So I think that there in business, there has been this notion that, if you want business results, you must be tough, you must be hard-nosed, and you have to sacrifice your own private life, you have to sacrifice the lives of your employees, and you have to sacrifice a little bit the well-being of your customers in order to maximize business results. And I think that notion is fundamentally flawed. And I think there's a lot of research to back the opposite idea, that if we can create happiness, that will actually strengthen business results. So there is no either or here. There is a both and. And I think it goes deeper than that, because let's imagine that you were the old kind of leader, right? The one it's all about results. I don't care about my people. I'm going to work 80 hours a week. They're going to work 80 hours a week. We're going to sacrifice everything. We're going to screw the customer, and then we're going to make a lot of money. Even if that worked, which I don't think it does for any sustained period of time, but even if it did work, what kind of a person are you? If that's the kind of leader you are, who are willing to, you're willing to sacrifice the well-being and health of your employees, and the well-being of your customers in order to maximize business results, how can you look yourself in the mirror in the mornings? How can you maintain your sense of self-worth and self-respect, knowing that yes, you get business results, but you do it at the price of hurting other people? That's just wrong. That's just morally and ethically wrong, and we should not do that. On the other hand, imagine you're the kind of leader who actually has a positive effect on everybody around you through your leadership. The way you lead people makes their lives, their work lives and their private lives more fun, more interesting, more challenging, more engaging. And you actually create, happiness for your customers through the work that you do and create a better world. Imagine the pride and the sense of satisfaction you as a leader can get, getting up in the morning knowing that, my leadership makes the world a better place. I think ultimately that is what leadership should be about. And if you're a leader and your leadership doesn't do that, you're doing it wrong.
Wow. Thank you so much, Alex. Leading with happiness. And Alex, if people want to learn more about you, where can they go? How can they learn, and where can they find more?
The best place to find us is on our website at woohooinc.com or at our blog at positivesharing.com. There are thousands of articles there on happiness at work.
Fantastic. Alex, very much appreciate it. Very grateful. I'm so glad we had a chance to meet in Austin. And,
yeah,
and
this has been awesome.
Absolutely. So thank you much. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been a fantastic time getting to learn the work of Alex and what he's bringing to the world through happiness. And we'll be talking soon. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for joining us today. We have many more exciting thought leaders to come on this show. If you enjoyed this interview, please click the like button and also subscribe so that you can stay tuned to learn from other powerful thought leaders in future shows. We would also appreciate your comments and feedback on the show, as well as who else you would like to hear from. And don't forget to visit our site, IGEOS.net, to download the free worksheet on the 5 disciplines of a high-performance team. See you next time.